from Batter Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. A warm welcome to my channel.
Today, let's make an amazingly tasty and easy meatball curry. It's a classic Goan dish. I'm going to show you how to make a soft chicken meatball curry. But you could use this same recipe to make the traditional beef or mutton meatball curry. Do follow my step-by-step video till the end for essential tips, and you can be sure your meatballs won't break open or become tough and dry. Okay, now let's get started with today's recipe for a super delicious Goan meatball curry right here at Batter Cake. There are two parts to today's recipe, making the meatballs and making the curry. We'll start with the chicken meatballs. The main ingredient here is ground chicken or chicken mince. An important point to remember is that whether it's beef, mutton or chicken, it's best to use freshly ground meat. Let's say you use frozen chicken mince. You'll find it releases a whole lot of water as it thaws. And then you'll have to transfer it onto a strainer and let it drain in the fridge for an hour or more. That's because to make meatballs, there should be minimum liquid in the ground meat. Otherwise, the meatballs won't hold their shape. Here's what I'm doing. I'm starting with boneless chicken breast. It weighs 250 grams. After rinsing and patting it dry, I chopped it into small pieces. And now I'll grind or mince it in my mixer grinder. You could also do this in a food processor. Here's my freshly ground chicken. Now let's check out the other ingredients. First, let's coarsely grind 2 tablespoons of chopped onion, a quarter cup of chopped coriander leaves, and 2 chopped green chillies. Here's the coarsely ground mix. As you can see, I've not ground it to a paste. Let's add this to the mince. Now there are a few ingredients of which we'll be adding equal quantities to the meatballs as well as the curry. I'll combine these to make a masala mix. The first 2 of these ingredients include 2 teaspoons of crushed garlic and 2 teaspoons of crushed ginger. You could also use garlic paste and ginger paste instead. The other ingredients include 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, and 1 teaspoon of garam masala. Let's mix all of this well and then divide it into 2 parts. 1 part for the meatballs and the other for the curry. Let's add this portion of the mix to the mince, followed by half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of ground pepper, and half a teaspoon of regular chili powder. Now any ground meat that we use for making meatballs needs to have some fat because the fat will keep the meatballs soft. So when you're making beef or mutton meatball curry, see that you pick cuts of meat that have some fat, not too much of it though. And since chicken has a lower fat content as compared to these red meats, we need to add a little fat to it, which is why today's recipe includes a special ingredient, 2 teaspoons of cashewnut paste. Instead of this, you could add around 1.5 teaspoons of oil, any cooking oil. Next, we'll add a quarter cup of fresh breadcrumbs to the mince as a binding agent. I cut off the crust from a slice of fresh bread and then ground it into breadcrumbs in my grinder on low speed. For taste, we'll add 2 teaspoons of lime juice. The last ingredient we'll add is egg. This will act as a binding agent and will also keep the meatballs soft. But for this small quantity of ground chicken, we need to add approximately just half an egg. So I'll whisk this egg and then eyeball it and add around half of it to the ground chicken. Now I'll mix everything, First with a spoon and then with my hand. Let's cover this bowl and keep it in the fridge for around 30 minutes. Chilling the mix will make it easier to shape the meatballs. Okay, it's been 30 minutes, so we'll now move on to shaping the meatballs. To do this, we have to first grease our palms with oil, or you could just wet them with a little water. And then take a small portion of the mix and roll it between your palms to form a ball, a little smaller than a golf ball. Just see that the shaped meatballs have a smooth surface that's free from cracks. Like this. I was able to make 10 meatballs from the mix. I'll now cover these and put them in my freezer for 10 minutes and then in the main compartment of the fridge for 30 minutes. This is to let the meatballs firm up a little before we add them to the curry. While the chicken meatballs are getting chilled, let's start making the curry. To make this, now this is an important tip, you'll need a thick-walled vessel or a non-stick pan to make sure the meatballs don't get burnt at the bottom. Here I have 2 tablespoons of oil heating in my non-stick pan on a medium flame. Let's saute some whole spices in it. 5 cloves, 8 peppercorns, 3 green cardamoms that I've cracked open, a 1-inch stick of cinnamon and 2 bay leaves. To the pan, we'll now add half a cup of finely sliced onion and saute this till it browns. Now let's add the remaining half of our masala mix, 2 teaspoons of coriander powder, 1½ teaspoons of regular chilli powder for some heat, and 1½ teaspoons of Kashmiri chilli powder to give the curry an attractive color. Let's also add 2 tablespoons of water. This is to ensure our spices don't get burnt while we are sauteing them in the oil. Let's add another tablespoon of water. I'll stir everything and let the spices cook for 2 minutes. Next, we'll add in half a cup of tomato paste. I got this by chopping 2 medium-sized tomatoes and then pureeing them in my mixer grinder along with their skin. Let's stir the mix and let it cook for 2 minutes. This is such a fragrant curry. My kitchen is filled with its appetizing aroma. Now let's add 3/4 of a cup of water to the pan. Stir the curry, and once it starts boiling, let it simmer for a minute. And then we'll stir in 3/4 of a cup of thick coconut milk and let the curry come to a boil again. I'll let it simmer for 2 minutes and then add half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of sugar to balance all the other flavors. I'll now taste the curry to see if the seasonings need to be adjusted. My goodness, the curry is very flavorful, or rather very flavorful, honestly. No adjustments needed. After that, let's carefully add the meatballs to the curry. Absolutely do not stir the curry at this stage. Cover the pan or vessel and let the meatballs cook on medium or medium-low heat for around 5 minutes without disturbing them. Let's check how our meatballs are doing. They're looking good. I'll turn the meatballs over with a spoon so they can get cooked on the other side. Now in some recipes, the meatballs are partially fried in oil before adding them to the curry because of the belief that this will keep them from falling apart in the curry. But I assure you, if you follow my recipe to the T and stick to all the essential steps, your meatballs will definitely hold their shape as they get cooked without having to fry them first. I'll ladle some of the flavorful curry on the meatballs to make sure they are well coated with it. Now let's cover the pan and cook the meatballs for around 15 minutes more, but this time on low heat. Usually, chicken meatballs will cook fully within 20 minutes, so make sure you don't overcook them. Overcooking will toughen the meatballs. The curry smells so good. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that when you cook the meatballs directly in the curry without frying them first, you'll have a tastier curry. These are done, so let's turn off the heat. Our flavor-packed chicken meatball curry can be enjoyed with bread or chapatis or even plain steamed rice. Let's add a garnish of chopped coriander. These soft and tasty chicken meatballs are now ready to dig into. Let's check how they've cooked inside. Perfect. This aromatic chicken meatball curry has the right mix of spices and a delightfully creamy texture, while the meatballs are soft and delicious. Do give my recipe a shot. If you like it, do share it with others and subscribe. And before I sign off, here's wishing you a happy and healthy New Year. Till we meet again in 2023, happy cooking!